Hello, everyone, and happy Easter. My name is Beanjar, and I wanted to give my initial thoughts on the new Marvel Disney Plus show, Daredevil Born Again. The first half of this video will be relatively spoiler free, so you can figure out if you want to watch the show or not. And the second half, I'll get more into spoilers and my opinion on everything. So, overall, I think this show is actually good. And that's coming from someone who thinks that pretty much all the shows that Marvel has made since Endgame have been complete slop. So I'll give a brief history lesson here. Prior to 2019, Marvel had a couple of shows on Netflix featuring some of their C tier characters like Daredevil, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, and Iron Fist. And pretty much all of those shows, maybe except for Iron Fist, were pretty banger. They were pretty low budget, but they're all well made, and it's like they actually tried. After Endgame, they pretty much completely canned the Netflix Marvel shows in favor of absolute bangers like What If, Secret Invasion, Miss Marvel, Hawkeye, WandaVision, Agatha All Along, She-Hulk, and Echo. Just 6 episode cliche messes that aren't intertwined whatsoever. So, after watching Marvel flop all these projects and ruin so many great established characters, I was worried that the same fate would happen for Daredevil. And it almost did. When Daredevil Born Again was originally put into production, all the rumors and leaks that I was seeing made me very worried, and it sounded like it was about to be a complete shitfest. In the original production, they didn't have the actor for Punisher, John Bernthal, because I think he just saw the script and thought it was too shit. Anyways, yeah, during the original production, it really wasn't looking good for this show, and it was about to be much like all the other Marvel Disney Plus shows to come out. I'm pretty sure even the actors for Daredevil and Kingpin, the two main characters, were protesting even doing the show midway through filming. So, halfway through, they have a creative overhaul. They delay the project, maybe not enough, and they decide to completely restart with new scripts, bringing back a lot of the original cast, which is all good things because the original Daredevil show is probably my favorite superhero media of all time. So anything they take from that is bound to be successful and help. I don't think Marvel should have ever canceled any of those shows, really. I think they should have built upon those a little and connected them to the MCU more, which is what they tried to do with their newer Disney Plus shows, but they lacked the same amount of effort and really pacing, I think, is a big part. The Netflix shows would have 13 episodes, and the Marvel Disney Plus shows would all have 6. The 6 episode format is not one that I think has worked yet for pretty much anything. It's always bad. I think it could work, but it just hasn't yet. It hasn't been done right. So thankfully, Daredevil Born Again features 9 episodes. I still think 13 would have helped in a lot of ways, which I'll get into later, but 9 is still definitely a lot better than 6. Despite this show having poor advertisement and a couple of bad reviews, I think overall it's entertaining, which is what a lot of people ask for at the end of the day. It's all they want, it's all they care about. They want to sit down for a bit and be entertained and maybe intrigued in the story. But at the same time, it's also well made if you look at it from a lot of different filmmaking aspects. Things like the cast, their acting, the cinematography, the fight choreography. A lot of the cinematography is very reminiscent of the old 3 season Netflix show. And anything you take from that is bound to be good and helpful. The writing and pacing is sometimes meh, sometimes not so great, but a lot of times it's good. It's kind of weird. I feel like you can tell, just overall with everything, what episodes were made before the creative overhaul and what was made after it. Because some episodes are shot very generic, like every other Marvel show. The writing is mid and everything. But then some episodes are just completely, it just has a completely different feel to it. So I feel like to pad out the runtime, they kept some of the shit they made uh, before the creative overhaul. but none of it really ruins the show. It's pretty good throughout, and I think if you're a fan of the original show, you'll probably be a fan of this one. I've even seen people say that this season of Born Again is their favorite out of the 3 seasons of the Netflix show. I disagree. I don't think you can really beat Daredevil season 1 or 3. Maybe they can in the future, but this definitely doesn't do it. And by the way, I say Netflix show because that's where the shows were originally made. They're all on Disney Plus now. They took them off Netflix. Now, something that a lot of these Disney Plus shows rely on are already established characters that people like. Pretty much every show I've watched, I only care for the already established characters and almost none of the side characters they introduce. This show kind of has the same problem where I don't think they build up their side characters enough. I can tell they want to rely on all of them and have all of them kind of be a piece of the puzzle, which they are, but you just don't really care for a lot of them. And like most of them, I couldn't even tell you their names, which I think after watching a show for 9 episodes is a problem. It just feels like they're supposed to be more important, but they're just not given the same time that side characters in the old show were given. Like after the first season of Daredevil, you know who Karen and Foggy are. They're built up and you even like them. But after the first season of Born Again, I don't even know the names of half the side characters, which is a problem. But I do actually think, especially if Sony gets their shit together and lets Spider Man play with the others, that this show could kind of save the MCU, at least for me in a way. I think it could reconnect it and spring off into a lot of other projects that connect to a lot of other movies. And the MCU can have that intertwinedness that he used to have during the Infinity Saga that it has kind of lost in this multiverse saga. So yeah, definitely recommend. I'm gonna go ahead and get into spoilers now so I can stop dancing around stuff and just say what I think about the things they did with this show. So this is your warning if you don't want the show spoiled for you. Click off now, maybe come back later. I'm just gonna briefly go over each episode. Might do like a specific review for each episode. I was gonna do that as the show came out, but I didn't. I was releasing a way out videos. But I think I'm just gonna go briefly over all of them. So, episode 1, we immediately start with some establishing shots in Hell's Kitchen. And with the music theme and Karen Foggy and Matt walking out, I just immediately feel a rush of nostalgia. And I really felt like we were picking up right where we left off with them at the end of Daredevil Season 3, which is something I like. Pre creative overhaul, they were going to have it be very disconnected from the original show, and Karen and Foggy wouldn't have been here at all. With how important and intertwined they've become with Daredevil's character, I just don't think that would have worked. So we go into Josie's, and they decide to assassinate Foggy Bear. I'm not sure what a lot of people think about this, but I think in the story it can work really well. If you want to break down Daredevil and have him stop being Daredevil, I think the best way to do that is have Daredevil shenanigans get Foggy, his best friend, killed. And Foggy's always been relatively against Matt being Daredevil at all. So I think that's like a way for it to really resonate. The opening fight they do is actually pretty good. There's a little bit of use of poor CGI. Um, Again, I don't know why this $1 billion company can't get better CGI, but it is not the worst they've done. I think if they just gave their CGI artists more time, it would have been fine. But you can tell it's CGI, but it doesn't necessarily ruin the fight. It's still very well put together. Speaking of CGI, some reason Daredevil can swing like Spider Man now. Don't know how I feel about that. And every time he does, it's just poor CGI, so I just wish that he wouldn't, because it would look better. It looks pretty cool when Daredevil swings in and just drop kicks fucking Bullseye. Now, would Daredevil try to kill Bullseye? I think we've already established Daredevil is pretty against killing, and even when he really wants to, he won't do it. But I think you could argue that he would make the exception in that case right there, where so many innocent people just die. His whole life just fell apart pretty much. So I would expect him to kind of lose himself a bit. I think making him quit Daredevil would have resonated even more. I think it would have worked even better if Bullseye actually died here. But I mean, he still tried to kind of kill Bullseye by pushing him off. But Bullseye lives. Wasn't sure how I felt about it at the time, but I do really love the actor and character for Bullseye. So I mean, I wasn't too upset by him sticking around. They kind of move on from Foggy's death a little too fast, or they don't really give us a lot of time to process it. And I think that's because Karen leaves, which I think is another mistake. I'm not sure why it happened, but Karen was only here for the first and last episode, really. And I think just having like her and Daredevil kind of talk about Foggy would have helped process it for the audience. But for some reason, Karen decides to leave. I feel like it's kind of out of character. I'm not sure how long Matt went ghosting her for, but I just feel like it's out of character for Karen to leave Matt when his best friend dies, because she's usually the glue in all of their relationship. So naturally, now that Karen and Foggy aren't here, you gotta have some replacements. So they have this black female lawyer and this old retired cop. And I called them that because I never learned their names. I watched the show throughout and I never learned their names, which, like I said earlier, is a problem. They just never really give them time to make us care. The replacement for Foggy kind of makes sense since he just got murked, but the replacement for Karen doesn't make sense to me because I think she should have stuck around in the first place. She kind of fills the same role as this retired police dude in like the investigation role. So I think you really could have just had her instead of him. But I don't know, maybe the actress wasn't available or something. But the pilot does a good job kind of letting you know how the whole show will be. The cinematography in it's really good. It was kind of taking me out for a bit. Like it's a little over fancy because sometimes I think simpler can be better. But I think in this case it was kind of relieving to see because a lot of Marvel and just Hollywood stuff in general all looks the same now with the same color grade, camera movements, composition, all of that. It's just boring. So this show was kind of relieving in that sense as it just was cooler to look at a lot of times throughout. You kind of get used to it later on. Now we move on to episode 2, which is kind of just more build up for the rest of the show. Kingpin's doing his mayor shit. Daredevil's doing his, not really his Daredevil shit, but his lawyer shit. And we're kind of building up this like White Tiger court case. I don't recall too much really happening in this episode, but after this episode, I was still like, it could be good. Like, I didn't really have an opinion formed after this episode yet, but I knew I was going to come back the next week to watch episode 3 at least. And episode 3 probably saved and made the entire show for me, because something I didn't expect Marvel to do was make an entire dialogue driven episode. With how shitty their dialogue has been in the past 6 years, I didn't expect that they could pull this off because they almost never do. And it's courtroom shenanigans, which is something I really liked from the original show. Again, whenever you take anything from that, it's good. It's something that She Hulk failed to do because they didn't have script consultants that actually knew how courtroom shenanigans worked. I'm not a lawyer, but I felt like the ones in this episode made sense, and it was all really entertaining without having to rely on any fights whatsoever. This episode also managed to make me care about a new character, which again is something that Marvel has been failing to do recently. This is a character that hasn't been established in any other MCU projects yet, and they made me give a shit. I actually know his name, it was Hector, but also White Tiger. Another good thing throughout these episodes is the BB report. They use Ben Urich's niece. Ben Urich was a very likable character in Daredevil, and I'm glad that he kind of gets brought up and isn't just ignored, so that it's even more connected to the original show. And the BB report is a good way to kind of turn the city into a character of its own, having all of them give their opinions. Now, moving on to episode 4. I think this episode has both the worst dialogue scene in the entire show and the best dialogue scene in the entire show. The worst one is Daredevil talking with his client, and I could just tell that a liberal wrote this scene. I mean, for some reason, they want you to feel sympathy for this guy because he's complaining he's been tossed around by the system. But it's because you keep committing crimes. Stop stealing shit, and maybe the system won't throw you around as much. Like, yes, you can make the argument that it's unfair and people just want to be able to live comfortably, but it's hard to. But that doesn't matter. This guy is just stealing chips and then crying when he has to face the consequences. And for some reason, my boy Matt folds and feels bad. I didn't feel bad. I thought it was stupid. I thought womp womp. But then we move on to the best dialogue scene in probably the entire show, which of course is between Daredevil and Punisher. Every time you get these two actors in a room, they just make art. They kind of rehash the same old argument they always have, but it's a good argument. And again, we kind of get to process Foggy's death a little bit more because it's brought up here. Now, the next episode is the one that feels like it was made before the creative overhaul but left in. This is just a filler episode, which a lot of times people don't like, but I think it can work. I actually want to see kind of more of this in a way in these superhero shows, with more episodes, of course, to focus on the main story. But like if you have 13 episodes and one of those is just kind of a disconnected side quest, that's not bad because that's something you could just kind of look back on and watch on its own. So I kind of like that they did that here. But for the most part, I feel like this episode isn't shot as good. Dialogue's a little cringy. Police interrogation is just awful. I guess they're hiring just about anyone nowadays. But still, this episode isn't bad. I'd kind of say it's mid, maybe a little on the better side. And in the next episode, we get Daredevil versus Muse. Daredevil's back in his costume to fight his first, like, real supervillain in this show. And the fight is also pretty well done with some mediocre CGI. But it really felt like I was watching Daredevil again. But the next episode, we get the payoff on the whole Muse story, and it's kind of anticlimactic. Like, it just kind of feels like the whole thing was a waste. We kind of see the intelligence of Fisk on display here. Now, moving on for the next episode, something I kind of forgot to touch on was Daredevil's new love interest. This is another side character whose name I do not know because they haven't built her up enough, but they kind of just hook her and Daredevil up. And I feel like they sort of cheat when they meet. Instead of having them actually bond through dialogue, they sort of cheat with this montage. And she's never really likable throughout the show. I'm not sure if she's really supposed to be too likable. But with the Muse payoff, she ended up killing Muse after being saved by Daredevil. And for some reason, when talking to Matt, she still blames Daredevil. But despite that annoying shit, the rest of the episode is where it gets really juicy. I feel like episode 8 and 9 were completely full after the creative overhaul because the show got really juicy right here. It was only 2 episodes, but they did a lot, and most of the things they did was good. This scene at Kingpin's event where the camera's traveling around to each side character having their own conversations made it feel like the puzzle was really connecting and everything the show had been setting up was kind of coming together. Which, with a lot of these side characters not being built up enough, in my opinion, I still kind of enjoyed it and it was intriguing. And this is the second time that Kingpin has held a ball of some sort and has had it crashed by Daredevil and Bullseye. I don't know if I don't like that they rehashed it or if I like that they rehashed it. But I mean, overall, it was done pretty well. I think the way Bullseye escaped jail could be pretty debatable. My dad was questioning the logistics of him spitting a tooth in someone's eye, but I didn't really care because I thought it was cool. And by the end, you have Daredevil making the ultimate choice to be Daredevil, saving his mortal enemy. And this all leads us into the finale, where we get more Punisher sent to protect Daredevil. This fight scene is pretty cool. I wish they kind of had Daredevil like struggling to keep them alive from the Punisher in the fight. But I mean, they still had their usual banter throughout the fight. and came out on top. And surprise, Karen returns. It's like all the dialogue in the whole episode immediately enhances when Karen is here. Because her chemistry with Daredevil and Punisher is really good and almost always produces a good dialogue. So I really hope she sticks around for a season 2 throughout because I think it's needed. This show started with a more broken down Kingpin after his defeat in season 3 and his repeated cucking in Hawkeye and Echo, but I feel like they really built him back up into the ruthless Kingpin we know, and now he's ready to be complete evil for season 2. Vincent D'Onofrio as Kingpin, Charlie Cox as Daredevil, and John Bernthal as Punisher's acting is pretty much top tier throughout this entire show, per usual. And they kind of did the same thing with Daredevil, having him kind of start being broken down and end up being the Daredevil we all know and love by the end. So it really feels like this show is okay at the start, but then pretty darn good at the end. And I think they really set up a possible season 2 very well. I really hope the season 2 happens because this is what could save the MCU for me. The Punisher fight scene is very good in the last episode, and then he escapes at the end in kind of a stupid way. I mean, one guard, are we serious? So yeah, I gave this whole show about a 7 out of 10, which is probably the highest rated Disney Plus Marvel show to come out in the past 5 years for me. I have a lot more I could talk about regarding this show, and I'll probably make more videos in the future. Again, the last video I recorded but didn't upload it was probably about an hour long of me talking about it. But I just wanted to get out a short little review on Easter today. So yeah, I hope everyone had a good Easter. I'm going to go ahead and edit this and then watch WrestleMania. I'll see you guys later. God bless. Vincent D'Onofrio.